Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. Welcome to our Do Good Business mini-series. My name is Morgan Heinrich, and I'm the Director of Marketing at Legacy Purchasing Group. Every Thursday we talk to industry leaders and industry experts. So this is why we are so excited to have this industry leader and expert on today. So we wanted to welcome on and thank Hope Kahan for joining us today. Hello, Hope.
Hello, Morgan.
How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you.
Yes, nice to see you too. So for those who don't know, Hope is the founder and owner of Trinity Park Talent. She is an amazing, amazing person to know, and she is just such a resource. Trinity Park Talent is a boutique talent advisory firm founded in 2019 and based in Fort Worth, Texas. The firm specializes in hiring mid to senior level professional positions in organizations that prioritize being a great place to work. Hope, thank you so much again for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I spent the first 12 years of my career in hospitality, mostly in event planning, sales, and operations in country clubs. But I found that what I loved most was building peak performance teams and developing a great culture. And I loved focusing on hiring. Fast forward, in 2013, I had a total industry change and went to work for a financial services firm. And initially, I was sort of stunned by the industry change, but then I realized that when you're passionate about the intersection of systems and processes and human dynamics, you can apply that in any environment. And so I really honed my skills in hiring and developing culture in that environment and went out on my own in 2019. And fortunately for me, my former employer became my first client. And now I'm almost 2 years in, helping companies who focus on being a great place to work with hiring top talent.
And I have to say, even working with you and knowing you, you are just such a great resource for those people who are looking for a new job opportunity, or even the companies themselves. I know some company owners that have worked with you, and they speak volumes about you. We had on a business owner who actually talked about you during our mini series. So that just speaks about how much you know.
That's awesome.
And so we're going to dive right into it. So today we're going to talk about 5 tips for hiring. So we have questions. And if anybody has any questions about hiring, interviewing, anything, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll answer those at the end, or Hope we'll get to them later. So, okay, my first question for you is, if you know you need to hire a certain position, where do you begin?
Great question. So often organizations go about hiring with sort of this shot in the dark approach and a lot of chaos. And it's so incredibly important to get the team aligned around what success looks like and what the stages of the interview process are before you begin talking to candidates. You don't want to take the approach of, we'll know it when we see it, because you probably won't, and you'll waste a lot of time. And the best way to get the team aligned around success is to make sure you have a clear, fresh, compelling job post that you circulate internally and everyone has a chance to review before you start talking to candidates. That way they know what success looks like and what we're screening for. And when you have that clarity, it's so much easier to communicate it to your network and to attract people to you who will be a match for that job.
So I recently read an article where you talked about the differences in success. Can you just give us an example? Because usually when you hear that the first time, you're like, well, obviously I want a hard worker. Obviously I want somebody that's going to make the company money. Can you just give us an example of the differences?
Sure. So, when you say things like be a hard worker or have integrity, I consider those to be things that are threshold competencies. You want that in every hire, and you will screen for some of those things. But specifically, you want to make sure that candidates you hire have the skills that you need to do the job, and that also have the character traits that are going to add positively to your culture. And the best way to know how to screen for those is to include those in your job post. And one client that I'm working with, they have their core values and their mission statement in every job post. And it's so wonderful because candidates will tell you that's what drew them in to apply.
Yeah, I've interviewed for jobs where that has been such a forefront of even applying for the job, because you want to be picky when you're an interviewee. You see those values and they align with yours. That's such an eye catcher, especially for those interviewees and potential hires that you want.
Absolutely.
So what do you mean by a compelling job post? Can we kind of dive into this?
Absolutely. And in fact, we're already there talking about making sure you include your core values. So a compelling job post is different from an old school traditional job description. And in fact, if your organization maintains traditional job descriptions with their HR department, you may want to create something that is a little bit different. And of course, they should be aligned. The basic content should be the same. But the compelling job post that you post publicly to attract candidates, either on your careers page or Indeed or LinkedIn, you want to create this with a marketing lens in mind. You start by thinking about your target audience. Who are you trying to reach? Imagine that perfect candidate who is a top performer, who has all of the character traits you're looking for. They have the exact experience and skill set that you need, and they're going to contribute positively to your culture. Write the job post to attract them. Candidates are interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them. And when they're looking at lots of job descriptions online, you want yours to stand out. So tell them about your company. Make it more conversational than sounding like legalese. Make sure it's current. Make sure it doesn't have typos. Have a couple of people proof it. And make sure it's engaging. Another really important feature of a compelling job post is separating what is absolutely required from what is negotiable or nice to have, because you don't want to decrease the size of your candidate pool by having a list of 12 or more requirements. Keep the requirements short, keep the nice to haves maybe even a little bit longer, and you'll attract a broader pool of top talent that may otherwise have screened themselves out.
I love this. I mean, this is such great information for creating that job post. Can you just give us an example of something that you've seen on a job listing that really was, I mean, that caught your eye immediately, that you were like, people should do this?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I read a job post this morning that someone shared with me for an app called Rise, and their job posts are so amazing. They start with a letter to the candidate, and they tell them this is going to be a very long job posting, and if you decide to read all the way through it, you'll know if you want to move forward in our process. They tell you all about their company. They tell you about their unique challenges. And then they lay out all of the interview stages in the initial job post, but it's so thoughtful and it's so engaging and it's so personal that they're also setting a really high bar by saying, we know this is a lot of work, but we want people who really care about what we're doing and want to be a part of it. And they're upfront in saying that.
Wow. I mean, I love that. And especially after being on the interview process and now being on the other side of that, I mean, what a way to kind of flesh out who you want and the people that want to come work for you.
Definitely.
So let's talk about interview stages. Tell us more about that.
Yes, it's so important to have pre-planned, structured interview stages. I like to create what I call a dynamic interview process where you're interacting with candidates through different formats: video, written, phone, possibly in person or live video. Interacting with them through these different formats will give you a unique way to assess their communication skills through different formats, but also you'll be able to break the ice and get past someone who just interviews well and see how they interact in different settings and environments. Additionally, SHRM, the Society of Human Resources Managers, they're a wonderful association, and they publish a lot of high-value content on HR best practices. And of course, I follow everything they are posting on hiring and recruiting. But they publish content about the importance of a structured interview process because it will allow you to methodically assess candidates against the skills and character traits needed to be successful in the job. And that directly correlates to running an inclusive process. What you're doing is minimizing discretionary questions and preventing, accidental decision-making based on unconscious bias. The most common type of unconscious bias is being attracted to people who are like you because they're comfortable or they're fun or you connect with them personally, but that is not a good way to hire. And these things aren't mutually exclusive. You might really enjoy spending time with the person you end up hiring, but you don't want to choose somebody based on that criteria without assessing to make sure they have the right fit of skills and character traits. Additionally, you want to be able to compare apples to apples by moving candidates through the same stages. and by asking them similar questions. It's also really helpful because your internal team knows what their role is in the process, and you're able to lay it out for the candidate on the front end so they know what to expect. Candidates really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, and for everybody watching this, so I actually met Hope when I was interviewing, and I went through this process of just the different formats of the video, the essay. I mean, and it was just, I learned so much about that company. Even I increased my skills moving forward interviewing because I knew how many different channels I can go through, and I learned how to become better. And I mean, I love this. This is such a great way to interview. So on that end, for an interviewee, what recommendations do you have for them going through that process?
Yeah, so one of the things that's really important to me with a multi-layered process like this is to engage the candidate and give them a chance to ask questions and to give as much information as we're getting, because I know it's a lot. And so on the candidate side, when you're faced with a multi-layered process like this, my recommendation is give it your best effort. It is amazing how few people really set themselves apart as the high achievers. From my perspective, reviewing many resumes, many applications, and many interviews that are the writing sample, the video that's submitted, the all-stars like you, Morgan, really rise to the top. And it ends up being a very small number. It ends up being very easy on my end to separate the needle from the haystack, the needle being the one who is really an ideal match for this opportunity. So candidates, don't be discouraged by an intensive process. Make sure you're getting information you need. It is a red flag if the employer asks you to jump through hoops, but they're withholding information. So like one of the things I try to do on the front end is share compensation details, or send them an overview of the benefits, or tell them a little bit more about the team who they'd be working closely with, things that they can't just get from the website or the original job post. I think of it as like pulling back the curtain and giving the candidate a look inside the company. So advice for candidates is don't be afraid to ask questions, get the information you need to know it's going to be a good use of your time, and then when you begin the process, go all in, because if you will be surprised how appreciated the extra effort is. It's really not wasted. And if one employer does not get back to you, or does not respond quickly, or does not appreciate you, I assure you another one will. Don't let anyone discourage you, because I know that happens a lot too, where people don't hear back, or they put the work in and then they don't know where they stand. So you want an employer who's going to be sharing as much as they're asking for.
Yeah, and I think that is so important, because when I was interviewing and going, because I've interviewed for lots of jobs, but I was going through that process, and they didn't even tell me what the compensation was. Like, there was the veil wasn't open, and you're kind of on the other end as an interviewee, and you're like, why am I spending hours of my time doing this? I don't even know what's included. I don't know anything about the company. It's just a random job posting, and now they're expecting so much from me. So that is just such a valuable piece of information there.
Definitely.
What's your favorite question to ask in an interview?
Well, this is easy. I definitely have one favorite question, and I usually ask it in several different formats. That favorite question is, what interests you most about this opportunity? And when I set up the job post and create my application questions, I try to create really thoughtful application questions that will engage the candidate and that will give me real substance. The last thing I want to do is create application questions where a candidate feels like they're just rewriting their resume in a different format, or it's not a good use of time. And candidate tip, a lot of people don't even answer the application questions. And unfortunately, I don't even look at those resumes, because I do really value their responses. So the first time I ask the question of what interests you most is on the application. And I will tell you, the answer to that question is how I decide if I'm even going to look at the resume. I look at that answer first. And the high achievers who have done their homework, who have looked at the company's website, who have read the whole job description, and who have connected with something personally. They're so excited to tell you why. And from the hiring manager perspective, that is so important to me, that the candidate is enthusiastic about the opportunity and that they've done their homework. It's not just a job. It has to be something they really want. And they may not know enough yet, but if your job post was compelling, that was a hook, and they're going to jump up and wave their hand and tell you about it in that first application question. And then I ask it again when I get on a call with them. As soon as I jump on a call to do a phone screen, I always recap and say, so I think you saw this opportunity on LinkedIn. Tell me, what was it that interested you most and prompted you to apply? And then I get to hear it verbally. And again, I'm listening for, did they do their homework? Are they enthusiastic? They will often start highlighting unique experiences from their background that correlate directly to what I'm looking for in the job. But if the candidate is not showing that enthusiasm, didn't do their homework, is not clearly articulating how their experience aligns to the job, then I know right away that it's not going to be a good use of time to move this candidate forward to the hiring manager.
I love that. And for the viewers watching right now, make sure to say hi when you're on. But pop in, what was your favorite interview question that you were asked? I mean, one of the ones that I had was, what percent of the time are you wrong? I mean, yes, what percent of the time are you wrong? And what do you do when you're wrong? And I mean, it kind of took a second to really think about that, because what does an employer want to hear? Do you say I'm wrong a lot? Do you say I'm never wrong? And what a cool, like, unique question, because you have to think on the spot. And it's not a typical interview question. So that was a cool one. So anybody listening to this, be sure to say hi, but also pop that in here, because we want to hear from you about your unique interviewing questions. Okay, so Hope, for people interviewing for jobs, what advice have they never heard before? What's a unique piece of advice that you have to offer to them?
For people who are interviewing for jobs, the first thing that comes to mind is kind of where I started, that you would be amazed how few people go the extra mile to set themselves apart. So when you see that job that you want, put the energy in. And I will say that I do really value when candidates reach out to me on LinkedIn with personal messages. I take that message and I jump straight over to see if they already applied. Don't send generic messages. I'm interested in this job. I'd like more information. Will you have a call? Doesn't tell me much. But when I get a message that says, I was so enthusiastic about this opportunity because I really believe I'm uniquely qualified, one little nugget about why they're qualified, that I just wanted to reach out. I've already applied. I hope you'll look at my application. I go straight to the application and look at it. And I actually have one candidate who ended up getting the job ultimately for an HR director position after she did that. And so it was short, sweet, didn't take a ton of my time. One tip on that, though, is always apply. I consider it a negative when someone just reaches out to me, but they've not taken the time to give me what I need to know about them to know if that phone call is a good use of my time. So apply, upload the resume, and then make that direct contact.
I love that. That is such a good tip, is just going the extra mile. And I love the tip about always apply. I mean, when my boyfriend was interviewing for jobs, and I have friends that have been interviewing, especially because of COVID and being laid off, and they're looking to maybe try something new, add something new to their resume, and the unique opportunities that you never know are out there. There are so many opportunities out there, and your skill set might be a perfect match for a different job description than you previously had. So Hope, I wanted to ask though, what is the process like working with you? How does it work? You're saying to reach out to you. What is it like?
When I work with a client, I start by helping them get clear on that job post. I ask a lot of questions. I interview a number of team members. I interview the hiring manager, but I also interview the peers who will be working with this person, or even if they have a direct report. I'm trying to learn about the culture, and I'm trying to help to engage the team in a constructive way so they will be active participants in the interview process and be aligned around what success looks like. I help them craft the compelling job post. I consult on how to source candidates, tapping their own network, getting referrals, posting it, where should they post it? Do they need help from a recruiter to source candidates? I have a recruiter who I partner with if they need that service. But a lot of the mid-level positions that I work on, they don't actually need a recruiter. They just need an effective process, and that's what I specialize in. And then I help them create those interview stages, and then I do the first phone call, I collect the video and writing sample, and then I facilitate moving the candidates forward all the way through to reference checks and releasing those who don't move forward. I shepherd them through the process and see it through to the end.
That's amazing. And it sounds like such a seamless, not stress-free process, because it is stressful. I mean, we talked last week with Holly about hiring the right person, and with that money that you get or whatever, and making that good decision. So it's definitely stressful, but it sounds like you just you calm them down, you do your homework before, and I bet it's an amazing process working with you.
Well, and here's the thing. It's a due diligence process on a very important investment. And when you're making investments, there's never a 100% guarantee of what the performance is going to be. But when you have a methodical process to evaluate that investment, you're optimizing for, outsized returns, and you're minimizing that chance of risk. And you can have confidence that you made the right decision with as much information as you could possibly collect. I try to collect a ton of data so that my hiring managers, my clients, can make really well-informed decisions very, very efficiently without a ton of their time.
That's awesome. Okay, and we do have one question before we go. What are your thoughts on those companies that include personality tests in the interview process? How effective are those tests when narrowing down your candidates?
That's a really great question. So I love assessments, but I don't love all of them. There's one that I really like called the Harrison, and it's my favorite because it is a work preferences assessment that is customized for the specific job that someone is interviewing for. So it evaluates the things they enjoy doing under the theory that when you spend the majority of your time doing work that you enjoy, you'll be very successful. And so I really like an assessment that is not time intensive for the candidate, that provides rich data that's directly relevant to the job. Other personality assessments I think are great for team building and maybe even onboarding, getting to know new hires, but not all of them are validated for hiring. Not all of them are constructive. And so it's really important, if you use one during the hiring process, that it is validated and appropriate for the job.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer for that. I mean, because I've taken tons of personality tests. I love them. But what you said, it was called the Harris?
The Harrison assessment is a work preferences assessment. And I use it for, again, mid to senior level professional roles. And it's it provides a really rich report that actually ties to ongoing engagement and development way beyond hiring.
Wow. Okay, so it's time to go. But one last thing, Hope. So if somebody's looking to hire you, or they're looking for a resource, what do you have to offer?
Well, so visit trinityparktalent.com. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I do share content. I share jobs that I'm working on LinkedIn, and I love to give free advice. And I will say, just to small business owners who aren't sure if they're ready to hire a consultant, I love to give away ideas. I share freely what my methodology is, and I strongly encourage folks to improve their own in-house practices. And so I'm always happy to offer that advice. And when they need the extra bandwidth, that's when I come in as a resource to help run the process. So visit the website, connect with me on LinkedIn, and reach out to me if I can answer any questions. Always happy to answer questions also to candidates who are interviewing for tips on how to interview effectively.
Well, thank you so much, Hope. I mean, you are such a resource of information. And again, Trinity Park Talent, look her up, connect with Hope on LinkedIn. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.